When did "fake it until you make it" backfire? Now, for the first comment. At Nelson Mandela's funeral, people took note of the sign language interpreter that seemed to just be making random hand gestures instead of actual sign language. Turns out he had made quite a few appearances previously and nobody had caught on that he knew literally no sign language. To me, this dude is just the poster child for "fake it till you make it." Next comment. Guy the first used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant when there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time. The lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender, and a bent piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit-chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who would then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that. Next comment. This reminds me of a TIFU post where Op moved to a new neighborhood for just a few months and decided to take some LSD to break it in. Op thought it was a good idea to go for a walk, and when he went outside, his new neighbor greeted him as "You're." Being on LSD and a bit of an introvert, he avoided conversation by speaking French as he knew enough to get by and did not plan on staying there for an extended period of time. This went on for about 8 months, longer than he expected to stay there, and eventually the neighbor had a friend of hers over who also spoke French and tried to start up a conversation with him as "You're." That's when he was like, "Yeah, I don't speak French." Next comment. Went to visit my older cousin in a big city, small town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we would be meeting are super snobby and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from small town A. Today I would tell him to get better friends. But when I was 18 I just wanted to fit in. We agree I would tell them I'm from City X. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friend head off to buy shots. "Where are you from?" "Monsieur. City X." "OMG. Me too." Quote. She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite, and where my parents work, just making polite conversation. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess, make up an entire fake life story. My cousin gets back to the table with the shots, and I have never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. At seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God. You don't have to drink like you do in small town A. Just chill." Quote. I did not look at bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me as much as I did in that moment. Next comment. I hired a Mandarin translator for a game I'm developing. Ran her translations through Google Translate to find they were a good match. Too good a match. Showed it to a friend of mine who's from China. Told me the translator just Google translated everything and that the end result was barely comprehensible. Next comment. The guys who act like they're ex-special forces on the first day of basic training because they were in JROTC in high school. I remember one saying, "I've basically already done this every year since I was a freshman," as we got off the bus. Idiot washed out by week 2. Next comment. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin. But I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So, whenever we had lesson I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe, by some miracle, I'd get it and play normally. I didn't. Next comment. Got a part-time job as a bartender to help with bills. Told them I knew how to bartend. I can pour a whiskey, Coke, and beer, so just figured I'd pick up the rest as I went along. First week I was serving to get to know the menu and someone called in sick. Owner makes me bartend. So I'm doing fine, just beers and a few mixed drinks. Then a party of about 40 people coming from a wedding come in and starts asking for all these different shots, different specialty drinks, etc. Totally shit my pants. Next comment. Okay, I guess it ultimately didn't backfire. But it's a pretty good story I was told in film school eons ago. Back in the 80-90s, a guy snagged an interview for a camera operating job at a TV production company that was way above his experience level. The interviewer gave him a camera, said, "Okay, take this apart and lay it all out for me. You have 20 minutes, and left him there. After panicking for a minute, he walked down the hall, found a technician working and asked him to take apart the camera for him, which he did. Interviewer comes back, says, "Good work. Now put it back together," and goes off to put out some other fires. Our guy tracks down the tech, who obliges again, and he was hired. When I heard this story, the guy had worked in the field 15 or so years, so I guess things worked out. Next comment. I knew a girl who would apply to jobs she was unqualified for, including a job at NASA and at Apple. She lied about her qualifications on her resumes. She landed several high-paying jobs, but would get fired after a month or two once her coworkers realized she did not have the skills to fulfill her duties. She would boast on Facebook about how she landed her dream job every few months. Not sure what she's doing now since I haven't spoken to her in years. I believe she moved to another country. Oh, and she took credit for the Mars rover and for the Beatles on iTunes. Next comment. A lot of the big instances of fraud came from fake it until you make it mentality. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos were faking the technology until they could get it to work. Fire Festival was faking it until they could get the money together. Anna Delvey intended to make it one day, but she Ponzi'd her way through until she would get there. Dr. Christopher Dunch, Dr. Death, was a horrible back surgeon, but he kept operating and working on patients anyway. I tend to think fraudsters don't really intend to hurt other people. They're just grossly incompetent and trying to cover their asses. Next comment. When, due to a tight budget on a magazine I edited, way back when, we couldn't afford a fashion correspondent, so I did it myself under an assumed female name. I'm male, and didn't tell anyone. Surprisingly, it was quite well received. Ran for 3 months or so before I got invited to a clothing launch. Next comment. I play the piano, not well, but decently. I can't sight read, but I can practice from notes and play a piece of music. My friend was studying music in college and needed to find a piano player to accompany her during class. I told her I could do it because I played piano, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I assumed I'd be able to practice the music beforehand. They wanted someone to be able to play a piece of music on the spot, sight unseen, while she sang. I couldn't do it. I faked it for 2 sessions and the instructor told my friend she had to get another accompanist because I was not good enough. I felt like a douchebag. Next comment. Not my story, but a senior back in my high school used to talk about how tough he was and how he was a black belt in karate and had plenty of boxing experience. He even brought his black belt, which I'm convinced wasn't actually his, to school one day to show it off. He eventually got the reputation of someone who was not to be fucked with. He was a beefy guy, sort of a meathead. Anyhow, fast forward a bit and he was having a heated argument with this sophomore in the hallway. People were gathering all around to watch the drama unfold. Things escalate, and he pushes the sophomore kid hard. The sophomore immediately responds with a punch square to the senior guy's nose. He drops like a sack of potatoes. And then this black belt karate expert starts fucking crying. I would like to tell you that this was the end of the fight. But it wasn't. He gets back up, blood dripping from his nose, and swings at the sophomore with quite possibly the worst punch I'd ever seen. Tears and blood are dripping off his face as he's throwing some huge toddler tantrum, just swinging his arms like a windmill and missing every punch. Some teachers came and broke up the fight, and both of them got suspended. The guy never bragged about his fighting experience again after that and sort of flew under the radar for the rest of the year. Next comment. I once talked my way into an internship with a neuroscience lab that regularly implanted devices into monkeys' brains as an undergraduate. Luckily, this did not result in any dead monkeys, as I had only been brought in to help process their data. However, the issue was that they were using MATLAB and I had vastly overplayed a basic understanding of Python gleaned from a side project on algorithms back in high school. They also simultaneously tried to give a crash course in neuroscience to little old freshman me, so I could be vaguely familiar with the data I was working with. Fun fact: brain surgery is not easy to learn. Yeah, I was politely asked to leave after about 2 or 3 months of banging my head against the wall. Pretty sure I wasn't able to contribute a single line of code or useful data analysis to their project. I did get a cool ceramic monkey mug out of it though, which was nice. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed.